Hello everyone, what is up? It is me, Ewan from What Culture Comics, joined as ever by Zoe to talk to you today about some mad Batman news, because obviously yesterday was Wednesday and that means today is Thursday and the comics came out yesterday, but some news that was adjacent to comics releasing yesterday but for a comic that hasn't yet released yet was Tom King taking to Twitter to show off a picture from what we believe is either his story on the Catwoman 80th anniversary special or his upcoming Batman and Catwoman series, which he's doing alongside Clayman. The art itself is actually by Mikel Janin, who has obviously worked with King before on Batman stuff, and it features a big thing, Zoe, doesn't it?
I would say, in the scheme of things, it's a big one.
It's a big one, yes, because Catwoman es pregante. She's pregnant. She's pregnant. She's preggers. She's knocked up. She has they're having a child. They're having a bat baby in this image, and it's really quite exciting because obviously when you take this story into account with all the DC 5G stuff, we've got Generation Zero coming out with May with the mad Wally West, Dr. Manhattan thing, I don't care, but the thing that we're most looking forward to is 5G, which is where they're going to speed the timeline up. Everything is going to matter, which again, coming from the Grant Morrison school of comics fans, that's really, really cool, because I've always liked that. And we're going to have new versions of heroes. Apparently Luke Fox is going to be Batman, and this one may actually have a theory to do with, kind of like Helena Wayne, who was obviously introduced years ago. That was the original Huntress before we had Helena Bertinelli. And in the Last Rides, it was the Batman Annual story. What was it, Last Rides? I can't even remember.
Batman Annual 2.
Batman Annual 2. There's an amazing story in that with Tom King where he kind of had the ending with it was like Batman and Catwoman's romance throughout the years, and we see Helena Wayne as the new Batwoman, which is kind of maybe our first clue that maybe this could be another thing. I don't know.
It's wild to me, because obviously when you read the comic, you're not like, oh, this is what's going to happen in the future, like it's real and definite. Because every time you see a future, you're like, oh, it's one of the 2 millionth? 2 millionth?
5-1. I was gonna make a bigger number, but then I remembered that DC only has 52 Earths.
We can't do maths.
No.
So I think it's very interesting. It's also very interesting because, I'm not gonna lie to you, when this news initially came out, I was like, oh wow, a pregnancy. I can't wait for this to be written out of the canon somehow. But then in Aquaman 57, Mira has also given birth to a child. And with both of these happening within the same time, I'm like, is this how they start?
What special romantic event happened like 9 months, or not 9 months ago because I haven't given birth yet, but what special romantic event happened so close to these?
The reveal of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie? The heroes love it.
Well, there we go. Meow. The most romantic scene ever in movie history, confirmed by the fact that both Mira and Catwoman are pregnant. But yeah, this raises all sorts of implications for DC going forward. Obviously, with Batman Annual the other year, that story was definitely, I believe, in a hypothetical future. It wasn't meant to be the concrete thing going forward. However, things are changing. Things are changing with the continuity currently, and everything we've heard so far is that DC are going to adopt a new continuity where everything matters. And considering that the biggest criticism that I believe we've kind of leveled at them over the last few years was that it felt as though with every reboot there was no point in investing in these stories because they just weren't going to matter in a few years' time anyway. So the idea of them actually moving forward and having stories that are going to take place across this big timeline. My big question here, Zoe, is maybe this is the end of the sliding timeline. Maybe we're going to get we're finally going to get a thing where it's like, the DC universe has a definitive beginning, middle, and end, which would hold, so many different, kind of implications, but it's certainly the thing that I'd like to see from them going forward.
Well, I was actually going to ask you a similar question, because it's interesting to me that these storylines have happened so soon to when the reboot is going to happen, because I'm like, are they going to do a full reboot?
Yes.
Or are we, in fact, going to have what I've wanted for such a long time, which is for things to not be called reboots, but rather just improvements? Because if they just continued it on with, like, these children growing up and, us seeing this hero's age, I could deal with that. Whereas I think a lot of people's complaints about 5G, and they're quite fair complaints, are like, well, why are we rebooting the universe yet again?
Yes.
We've done it 3 times within 10 years. Like, this shouldn't be happening. So I think if this manages to be the way they counter that by saying, no, look, it's happening in the universe, don't worry about it, things are the same. Because I'm not comfortable with too much change.
Yes, I mean, I kind of pieced out of DC with the New 52 and then came back when DC Rebirth came in and they changed it all again, now they're changing it again. Obviously my brain is a little bit like, what? What's going on? But yeah, if they can make it so that everything matters, I think that's a really cool approach to do. I think maybe we get too hung up on what does and doesn't count towards a set universe. If they just go, hey, you know what? Screw it. Everything happened.
Have what you want.
You know what? We'll go with Grant Morrison's theory that Batmite was a self-defense personality mechanism, and also he had Zur-En-Arrh going on there because that is the coolest idea ever. But in terms of who we think that this pregnancy can spin out. Obviously, we know it's going to be, well, we don't know yet. It looks as though it's going to be from the Catwoman issue because obviously all of the Batman Catwoman series that Tom King's doing is being done alongside Clay Mann, and obviously the image that Tom King tweeted out yesterday was from art from Mikel Janin. Do we think this is going to be a one-off thing, or is this a tease of things to come? And do you want to see Helena Wayne as Batwoman?
I've hoped that it's sort of a permanent fixture because I think if we're going to kill off characters like Alfred, you can't just kill off people and not add more. Like we sort of have to have some kind of cycle. We're at a net deficit
right now.
Yeah, we need more Bat people, and thus a permanent child. I think would be very good. I'm not so sure if it will end up being Helena, but I am very excited for that to be a possibility. Helena. It's because I did the pregnante thing. I'm ruined now.
Yeah, no, the only reason why I think it would be pretty cool if it was Helena, obviously, this version of the DCU already has Huntress. And obviously, in the future, if it was going to be their daughter, I think it would be I just really love that Batman annual story. It makes me cry when Catwoman sees the cat at the end and it's like, oh God, emotions. But at the same time, I think that's a great hypothetical future to actually, just pick up and run with, because I think the design, obviously the Batwoman design is kind of taken from Kate Kane's that's been going on for the past few years now. It's just very kind of nerve-wracking and exciting to consider what could possibly happen going forward. I mean, obviously with Aquaman as well, with Mira having a child, maybe that could be the introduction of Aquagirl, who I believe was in the Batman Beyond Justice League, where you had all those cool different characters in that league, like old Superman, Terry McGinnis, the really cool Green Lantern that they haven't introduced into the comics for some reason, which is really frustrating. You have Barda there, you have Green Lantern and Hawkgirl's son in there as well. And I'm not just saying that they should incorporate all the stuff from the DCAU, but on the other hand, I think an Aquagirl character along the lines of what we saw in Batman Beyond would be pretty cool too.
I think you raise a really good idea in that I think we've all presumed that this timeline will be a new timeline. Like, obviously we know that it takes from elements of storylines, but when we discussed it, I always thought those storylines would be ones that have happened in the past. But the idea for them to incorporate a bunch of the theoretical future scenarios and be like, no, you thought these were all in alternate universes. They're not anymore, let's go.
God, yeah.
I think, obviously, yeah, it's sort of like having a child. You're like, this could go very wrong, but also could go very right.
Exactly, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, so the actual plans that DC are going with here, Generation 1 starts in May. Obviously we talked about that the other week with the Flash Dr. Manhattan stuff, and here are the synopses that they have for that first part so far. So the questions that they pose are, what was the previously undocumented Big Bang of the Age of Mysteries, which is also what they're referring to this Generation 1 as? Which character truly ushers in the dawn of superheroes, inspiring all the rest? I think that's a reference to the Justice Society. What was the real reason behind the Justice Society of America's retirement? Which Golden Age hero will become history's greatest villain? What contentious alliance kept the Wayne family dynasty alive after Thomas and Martha's deaths? And who are the new, never-before-seen wildcards that will be instrumental in fashioning DC's push to the future? Now, that is pretty much, to me, not necessarily explicit confirmation, but certainly tacit confirmation that we're getting. They're going through and making their own timeline, but establishing what has actually happened. And that is kind of what DC has been begging for a long time now. Especially, I think the New 52 was meant to be this, but because they kept so many bits and bobs from different continuities, it kind of made everything more confusing. So yeah, I'm here for the new generation of heroes. I think I want a new generation of characters that people can latch onto and make their own. And DC, I feel, is so beholden to the Silver Age in particular and the past. This is kind of the necessary antidote they need. At the same time, I do understand the trepidation regarding reboots and the like, because I'm pretty done with them as well.
Well, I think if they did it in a clever enough way where, because obviously they don't have to just skip plenty of years. Like, Batman still exists for a long, long time. So they could have the main series continuing and then say, hey, if you need a little break from Bruce doing his thing, you can go see his kids. You can go check on his children and see how they're doing. It's
one thing that I've wanted for ages. Is like one of my favorite series of all time is Hellboy, and the one thing that I think is genius about Hellboy and the BPRD and the Mignolaverse titles is that they all take place over a set span of years, but you have different titles releasing at the same time, set at different points in the timeline. So you could have Hellboy and Hell running at one point, but then you also have Hellboy in the BPRD in the 1950s. And I think that's a really clever way of actually fleshing out this world. Obviously, you don't want to be too beholden to continuity because the DC universe is so expansive, but at the same time, I do like the idea of having all those different generations that you can latch onto. Say you're really in a pulp mood and you want to watch or read the adventures of Slam Bradley in the 1950s. You could totally go do that. That would be really cool. Say you want to read something about Jonah Hex in the 1890s rather, but at the same time you're interested in knowing what his great descendant Ginny Hex is up to in Wonder Comics, and you could have both those stories releasing at the same time, but obviously over the course of one big timeline, which I find really exciting.
I think it raises a really good point that all of these reboots have sort of had to cherry pick what they want in it and what they want not in it, or had to say, oh, none of what came before matters. But I think it would be much better if the way this seems with this reboot is that it can just be like, no, the things you love, those are what matter. Because everyone has different things they like.
Wow, that's a really oddly emotional and happy note to end on.
I'm not crying.
Exactly. Yeah, please let us know what you think of Batman and Catwoman having a baby down in the comments below. Are you looking forward to seeing what will actually, is it actually going to be a thing or is it not going to be a thing? Please let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And also what you think of DC's planned timeline changes, because it seems as though big things are brewing in 2020. Once you've done that, please sure to go back to whatculture.com/comics, because it's a great little hub for all your comics needs. We have lists, news, articles, and stuff like this every day. And also don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because the YouTube gods have decreed that it really helps us out, so please do that as well. You can follow me on Twitter @UnRunesThings. You can follow Zoe on Twitter @ZemmaScal. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.